Is it just to buy as much Bitcoin as you can and hold it for as long as possible and never sell it?
That's one of the goals, yes. But I think what makes us different than a lot of these other businesses is we plan to build Bitcoin products as well. I mean, the founding group is Tether and myself. I founded and lead Strike is one of the bigger Bitcoin financial services firms in the world. Tether obviously is one of the most impressive companies in the history of humanity, but specifically in building massive cash flows within the space. So Paulo and I, before we were CEOs, we were engineers. We built a lot of products. And so we plan to not only acquire as much Bitcoin as possible, raising capital in all sorts of deep capital pools, but also build products, build technology, build tools. I think when people eventually think of 21, it's are they a competitor to Coinbase? Are they a competitor to Strategy? For us, why not both? We think we have that potential.
Do you envision a future where Bitcoin treasury companies such as Strategy, Mara, and you guys end up buying so much Bitcoin that there really isn't actually much left out there on the open market for people to trade? After all, it is a fixed number of Bitcoin, so no more will be created once it reaches that number.
Right. You know what's fascinating about the asset, and it's not intuitive because it's so rare, is that, to your point, it is definitively scarce. So if everyone in the world wanted an iPhone, Apple could make more. If everyone in the world wanted a McDonald's cheeseburger, McDonald's could make more. The fact that Bitcoin cannot increase its supply means the new supply comes from the market. If you want more Bitcoin, you don't go to the Bitcoin factory to get one. You have to go up in price. Is there enough Bitcoin for me at 120,000? No. Okay, 130, 140, 150. So I tell you what, there's always Bitcoin available. Just depends on what you're willing to pay for it. And so what I think will happen is this price will continue to discover higher because Bitcoin is the scarcest thing. It's inelastic to the amount of demand that searches for it. So the amount of buying power that we're seeing from the capital markets, from the ETFs, and potentially from nation states like the United States, I think they'll find the supply they're looking for. They're just going to have to go get it at a higher price.
Happy Bitcoin Wednesday, freaks. It's your host, Odell, here for another Citadel Dispatch, the interactive live show focused on actual Bitcoin and freedom tech discussion. That intro clip was Jack Mallers of Strike and 21 talking about how Bitcoin is going to go much higher, which I tend to agree with. As always, huge shout out to the freaks who continue to support the show with Bitcoin. Dispatch is ad-free, sponsor-free, purely supported by viewers like you with Bitcoin donations. All relevant links are at citadeldispatch.com. We're on YouTube. We're on Twitch. We're on every podcast app. We stream to X through the 1031 Funds X account as well. Since my partner at 1031, Jonathan, blue checked himself for that privilege. Top two supporters of last week was through the Fountain podcast apps. We have Poopsicle with 1,000 sats said, Citadel Dispatch is my go-to podcast when sitting on the toilet. And we had Ride or Die Freak, Mav21, zapped us on the Noster, video, zapped us 1,000 sats. You can find all the videos of Dispatch signed and hashed, zappable at primal.net/Citadel. With all that said, we have our good friend, return guest, absolute legend, newly discovered Twitter influencer, Calle. How's it going?
Hey man, how's it going? Thanks for that kind intro. I'm a blue tech now.
You're a blue tech now. Congratulations. How does it feel?
It feels like, something you want to have a shower after. I didn't choose my blue check. I think Twitter has some kind of weird algorithm, so they put a blue check on you, even if you don't want one. I always pride myself that I didn't have one because I don't want to pay to play games.
And you can't remove it.
Here we are. No, can't remove it. But I
It's not a.
I can write long posts now, which means I can send eCash over Twitter.
It's
But
not.
that's a good thing.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, it was a bit of a troll. You're most well known for being the creator and lead maintainer of Cashu, and now being one of the co-maintainers of Bitchat, which is what we'll be talking about. But just on the X thing for a moment, it's actually not a weird algo. The incentives are actually very clear. If you have more than 2,500 blue checks following you, they automatically give you a blue check because they want every high value account to have a blue check to sell more blue checks to the low value accounts.
Feels
It's what
bad, man.
it's what they did to me right before I deleted, which I
I
guess
thought
was
you were
like
still on Twitter.
it was like 470 days ago or something like that, maybe 490.
I thought you were still on Twitter.
No, see, I'm there in spirit because I have Jack, I have Mallers, who's a way better spokesperson to the normie crowd and the suit crowd. He's absolutely been crushing it on the Mallers show and CNBC and Bloomberg. And then I have you there, who's a way better spokesperson for privacy and freedom money than I could ever be. And as long as I can support both of you from behind the scenes, then I accomplish all my goals in terms of the movement without actually having to expose myself there.
Very appreciated. Thank you for the kind words, and don't even think about quitting.
You can carry the torch. Let's start with Bitchat because I feel like Bitchat's having its absolute moment. Dorsey, I guess, vibe coded it over a weekend, released it out onto the internet. The test flight immediately got filled up because he released it iPhone only test flight, and the App Store approval was taking a while. I think test flight maxes out at about 10,000 people. Then you vibe coded an Android version, a native Android version, which then you released. And since then, now it's on the actual iOS App Store. So you can get it on both iOS and Android. But the point is like I haven't seen the crazy organic viral hype around it was pretty impressive. I mean, obviously Dorsey has one of the largest X accounts in the world, but I don't think anyone was expecting that kind of excitement.
Yeah, it caught on pretty quickly. I'm not sure if Jack expected that kind of resonance as well. And I mean, for those who don't know, maybe we should start with the basics. So, Bitchat is a Bluetooth-based Mesh chat app. It allows you to chat with anyone who's close by, close enough to be in your Bluetooth range. That is, let's say, like 30 meters or so. But it also builds a mesh with anyone around you. So it's similar to like Find My with iPhones, for example, or when you lose your AirPods or something, they can talk to your phone even if you're far away. And they do that by talking to other iPhones that are close by and then get to the internet. Bitchat allows you to build mesh networks of people around you to build like a larger mesh so you can chat with like people that are further away than what your iPhone can reach. And those are individual meshes. So this concept is pretty cool because it doesn't use internet. It is kind of very different from all the other chat or messaging apps that people are used to. And I think that might also be the reason why so many people found it interesting. Also, for completeness, it should be said that this is not the first mesh-based or Bluetooth-based chat app out there. There have been a couple before. Some listeners might remember FireChat. This has been maybe 10 years ago or something, where they also tried to do something similar, built an app that works over mesh, and it's been like even in the Hong Kong protests that were before COVID and like a couple of years before COVID when they started. Those were very important tools for the people on the street, on the ground, because they needed a way to talk to each other without using the internet. So all in all, it's a very different kind of chat app, and that might also explain why so many people found it interesting. I guess most people that heard of it, of Bitchat, didn't know of the predecessors. And yeah, so I think now Jack has released it on the iOS App Store a day ago or so. And it's already in the top 100 free apps in the US. It has surpassed even Signal as in the free social app category. It's kind of like just trending upwards, or as Jack Mallers would say, it discovers higher places in the App Store ranking. So super exciting, and that's for the iPhone version that Jack built. I saw that. I found it very interesting too. So I saw it on the same day as anyone else. I didn't know that he was working on this. And when I saw it, I really liked it a lot. I also liked FireChat and all the predecessors before, things like Meshtastic, for example. I'm just a big fan of alternative infrastructure and things to circumvent ISPs and build like alternative, in quotation marks, like internet applications, although this is not internet, obviously. So I found this super interesting. I looked at it, saw that, like I got into the test flight on my iPhone and on my Mac. I've been playing around with it, but I'm not like primarily an iOS person. So I thought, well, if he can do it, I can probably do it too. And sat down, took like all of his code, fed it into an LLM, tried to analyze it, came up with an implementation plan, and then just wiped my way through it. And it probably took me like half a day or so to get a working version that could send and receive messages with the iOS version, which is insane. Like, I'm very happy to talk about the development cycle and the way we built this app. Jack built the iOS version, I built the Android version, because it's a completely different way of building stuff. It's been incredible also for me as a seasoned developer. It's been an insane experience to be able to see that you can just really do things in an extremely fast and efficient way these days using AI, if you're willing to basically like go all in and vibe with the agent.
Yeah, so I mean, I think there's a lot to unpack there. First off, so just like a quick overview, because it's hit the mainstream hype cycle. I think there's a lot of just general confusion over what mesh is, and I think you did a good explanation. But just to sum it up for the Americans listening, like Bluetooth has about 100-foot range, right? So Calle said meters. That's what the rest of the world uses. Bluetooth has 100-foot range. Everyone you're communicating doesn't have to be in the 100-foot range. Out of the most simple explanation, imagine I'm standing somewhere, I got Bitchat open, Callie's 100 feet away from me, and then Bob is 100 feet away from Calle. I can still communicate to Bob because it relays through Calle, who's equidistant between us. But you can imagine like a web kind of developing among people where it could then expand out, particularly in places like cities, high density areas, festivals, sporting events, places that sporting events and festivals historically have had issues with cell connection and Wi-Fi connection and stuff like that, but they have high density people. In disaster situations, you might not have internet. In situations where government is trying to oppress people, one of the first things they do nowadays is cut the internet. We saw Iran recently do this while the war was going on with Israel and Trump was bombing them. They cut the internet so that their people couldn't communicate. In those types of situations, mesh can be very helpful. Now, in your example, you used the Find My network on Apple as an example. I think another example would be like their AirDrop feature, where you can send files and stuff between people, which was actually also used in China. But then after pressure from the Chinese government, Apple heavily limited it globally. But the interesting aspect of the Find My thing is it does have like this automatic seamless internet bridge, where if I walk past your stolen or lost AirPods and I'm connected to the internet, it will then ping the internet with the location. So it uses near-term communication like Bluetooth. in proximity, but then it bridges out to the internet. Is there a plan? I mean, obviously, in good times, I think, or in any type of situation, if one person's in the mesh, ideally, if one person in the mesh has the ability to connect to the internet, that could be quite powerful for everyone that is using that mesh to then be able to communicate with the outside world. Is that one of the plans in place for this going forward?
Yeah, absolutely. So as you said, right now it's useful for high density situations where you have a bunch of people around you and you want to communicate. This can also be, by the way, devices that don't have internet by themselves. For example, a computer without a SIM card inside, right? So you can also use it on your desktop computer or your laptop to talk to other laptops, even if you don't have an internet connection. So as you said, like you made a couple of really good examples of where this might be useful in like a sports stadium, could be a flight or a kind of disaster situation. But yeah, so since you'll always be limited to be able to reach people in your range or a couple hops away from your range because of this mesh and the size of the mesh, I think like you'll probably be able to reach a couple hundred people, maybe a few thousand. It's hard to say because we haven't been able to really stress test it with a bunch of people yet.
You got to test it in a
And
sports stadium. That's like
we're definitely going to test it in the next BTC conference that is approaching soon. So like culminations of like congregations of many Bitcoiners is a great way to test it. By the way, just like a little segue, I will come to your question, but like thinking of Bitcoin Core. So a phone's Bluetooth chip is typically limited by I think to around 8 connections per chip. So at least on Android, it's around 8 connections. And with 8 connections, you'll never be able to reach everyone, right? And coincidentally, Bitcoin D itself is also limited to 8 inbound connections. So with 8 inbound connections, it is kind of possible to reach the entire world, because if the connectivity is heterogeneous enough, then the network that forms around people is dense enough to reach almost anyone. 8 or 7 hops is also that famous number of hops of separation between any 2 people in the world, if you follow friend networks established before social networks. So even in the 90s, you were able to reach anyone, from anyone to anyone, sending, let's say, like a written letter, over 7 hops on average. So that number is itself okay. The number of connections doesn't need to be drastically higher to get a big reach, but for Bluetooth, you're mainly limited by the range of the individual connection, and it's basic. You can't assume that you'll be able to cover the entire planet if you don't add like a bunch of new hardware and then also improve routing a lot. So routing is also one of the big problems that we can talk about. Now, coming to your question, obviously, that you can imagine this as individual like islands of meshes. That could be your neighborhood and my neighborhood, and we're very far away, but we're both in a dense populated area, so we can talk to our neighbors. But how do I now talk to you over Bitchat? And then we need something else that connects our meshes. And there are multiple ideas of people that proposed different ways of doing that already. So, if, for example, one guy, I think 2 days ago or something, popped up. He's built kind of a amplifier for this whole thing, like a dedicated device that can connect to all the Bitchat devices around you, but can also make one connection very far away to another mesh. And if there's one other guy with a similar device, it could also be mesh-tastic, by the way. It's a different mesh network that has long-range connections. Then you can imagine situations where you can connect different meshes still without using the internet. So there are ways to do that, and there are multiple people working on multiple different ways of trying that out. And we'll see how that goes, and I'm optimistic that it can be useful. Now, obviously, the best network, the biggest network that we have is the internet. So yes, can we use the internet? Can we do the same thing as your iPhone does to your AirPods, for example? Your AirPods talk to the internet using one single hop to a nearby iPhone, and that iPhone then transmits the location to the Apple network. And so the answer there is yes, we can do that. And the plan actually is to use Nostr for it. So what we want to do is have individual meshes that can be located in different places. We still have to think about how to identify these meshes, whether a mesh needs to be like its own dedicated thing. Does it need an ID? Does a mesh need a location? But if we can address a mesh, then we can also build connections between meshes. Right now, what I think is being worked on is a direct connection between two people. So if I meet you, let's say offline in a sports stadium, and we connect over our Bitchat apps, and then I press on the favorite button, like when we chat, there is an encrypted chat between us that has great privacy. But I can press like a favorite button, and I can remember your public key essentially. And then after we met, we can go separate ways, and you can go home, I can go home, and as long as like there is internet on both of our phones, and the app detects that we're not close by, then it will use Nostr to talk to the other guy. So that will be a person-to-person connection going over Nostr, and will be very different from other Nostr apps, and it will like not be connected to your social identity and so on, at least for now. But it can use this existing internet network to connect these two people. And now a natural extension of this, as you already hinted, is now I want to, like, let's say my friend who doesn't have internet wants to talk to you, and I do have internet, and you're far away. So can my friend now use my phone's internet to talk to you, similar to the Find My network? And I think like that's going to also be a thing where inside your mesh, you're just going to look for one of the devices that has internet, and then use that internet connection to, for example, make establish a communication channel with someone else over Nostr. So yeah, long-winded, but yeah, detailed way of saying yes. It's a plan. We want to extend the range of these meshes basically to infinity, as long as there's an internet connection as well.
Awesome. Yeah, I mean, if we want a real example of this here, is we recently had that hurricane, or I guess maybe it was a tropical storm, that hit North Carolina and Eastern Tennessee, and created a ton of devastation, knocked out internet for everybody. And I mean, they're still trying to recover now. It was almost a year ago. Maybe it was like in September-ish when it happened. So a little bit less than a year ago. But at the time, there was actually a lot of work on the ground to bring Meshtastic devices in to connect the local communities to each other to coordinate disaster relief. But also at the same time, there was people bringing in Starlinks, and it was really hard to get Starlinks. Like the best time to own a Starlink is before you need it, not when the disaster is going on. But in this scheme, if you could imagine a situation where one person in the community had a Starlink, and then 1,000 people in the community had BitChat, and there was some kind of way. And so that one person with Starlink had BitChat and was connected to his own Starlink Wi-Fi. Then all of a sudden, that entire mesh would have access to the rest of the world without everyone there needing a Starlink.
Yeah, that's right. And especially for those kind of situations, like you, even like the tiniest low bandwidth connection is super helpful. Like in a disastrous situation, you don't want to browse the web and download a YouTube video. You want to ask, hey, where are the supplies, or where is help needed? Like those are short messages can go a long way in really bad situations. And that's what people try to reestablish in most cases, right? So Meshtastic, for example, which is a great project. We also will limit you in the amount of data that you can transmit, but even a short text message itself can be extremely useful in that situation. But I want to say like one more thing on top, which is not only the utility of this whole scheme in a situation where you have to depend on it, but also just being able to build infrastructure that is not controlled by anyone. So this is kind of a cypherpunk principle way of thinking about it. Is the internet stack that we have, and in last years, especially with Bitcoin and things like Tor or alternative like ways of communicating, such as Meshtastic. We have kind of a very good stack at this point where we can have like money that is not controlled by anyone, and we can have all these services. We have Nostr, which is key, like public key infrastructure where we can find each other and communicate with each other. The Achilles heel of the entire internet stack is still the hardware level, like the cables and the ISPs that control access to the internet. Or for your phone, this is your SIM card provider, so your internet provider. And these days, it's almost impossible to get access to the internet without identifying. So these networks are so monopolized, and it's so hard to become a new player in the internet ISP game that we have converged to like small number of very big players, and who can just dictate all the rules. And sometimes they even don't want to be as cruel as they need to be, but also like the government and the rules around just providing communication infrastructure forces them to basically KYC anyone who wants to use the internet, right? So in many parts of the world, you cannot get a SIM card anymore without registering and identifying yourself, and that that problem just propagates upwards. So it makes me really furious to think about this. But like so much of the internet infrastructure that we have today, even an email address with Gmail, for example, like try to make an email address with Gmail without a phone number. It's basically impossible these days. So your phone number is tied to your identity, and there is no way out. You have like almost no way to get a SIM card. I mean, some people know how to do it, but most people don't. There's basically no way to get access to the internet without identifying. So just working on the infrastructure level is something extremely important. I think very, very hard problem to solve, and Bitchat is not going to be the answer of like getting rid of the internet infrastructure there, but at least having like a low bandwidth version of something that we can use without permission, without being able to shut it down remotely and so on, is extremely important. So that's why I'm a big fan of these alternative projects as well. We mentioned Meshtastic, FireChat, and there are others as well. And that's why it makes sense to work on something like Bitchat, because you cannot turn it off. You don't need access to a like antenna that is controlled by T-Mobile or something. It's just literally the Bluetooth chip in your phone that you own, and the Bluetooth chip of your friend over there that they own, and that's it. We can communicate without having to ask for permission. That being said, I am aware that Bluetooth itself is not the most resilient infrastructure there is. This is just something inherent to radio communication itself. Radio communication is not invincible. Let's say you're in a protest situation where we can imagine the Hong Kong protests before COVID, where you'll be able to talk to people around you, and the privacy will also be good enough so you can do that safely. But as soon as there is someone with a big blaster that just blasts electromagnetic waves in the Bluetooth range, you can disrupt those channels also very easily with a lot of power. And governments know how to do that, and they can also do the same also with your mobile connection and your phone ISP basically. So those jammers will still be able to turn off these networks, and it's very hard to defend against those because that's just how radio works. And the stronger your device is, the more it will kind of take away from everyone else trying to communicate on the same bandwidth. So yeah, those are kind of a couple of the properties of Bluetooth. But maybe we'll find more ways to connect peer-to-peer in the future, maybe with Wi-Fi Direct and other technologies that offer similar properties.
I mean, yeah, talking about the vulnerabilities of current infrastructure and trying to block access. One of the things I've noticed at both Citadel Dispatch and Rabbit Hole Recap, my two shows that stream live to Nostr on Zapstream, is that we get hit with DDoSes every time we go live, which is a nice validation by someone with resources that hates me. But they cannot stop the signal because everything will get published to the podcast apps after the fact. And we are still live on YouTube, even though Dispatch is shadow banned there. So you can just search Citadel Dispatch in YouTube if you want to follow the stream there. It looks like Zapstream has just come back online. Wouldn't be surprised if it goes back offline again. But yeah, everything gets posted in Nostr afterwards. It's harder to stop that. So you can go to primal.net/Citadel or search Citadel Dispatch in your favorite Nostr app or your favorite podcast app to see the recordings after the fact. I have a question for you, Calle. I mean, well, on the protest piece, one of the things we do see is because cell connections have been the primary means of communication for modern day protests, is that they run stingrays, which are basically mobile cell towers, and have you connect to them instead of to a regular cell tower. They can disrupt connections. They can track people that way. Presumably, if something like Bitchat becomes more and more used, they will actively jam Bluetooth connections. This is to be expected. It's a demand response kind of situation that maybe they haven't felt the need to do yet. And when I say they, I mean global governments fighting protests. I have just to pull it back for a second. I mean, mesh is something, for the reasons you highlighted, is something that I've been very excited about for a long time. And there's been a lot of false starts, right? There was LoRa, there was the closed source proprietary Gotenna, there was obviously Meshtastic, as you mentioned, FireChat. Is this time different, and why is it different? Like it was, maybe I'm like disenfranchised old man, but when I saw BitChat get released by Dorsey, it was cool. I was like, that's awesome. I'm glad to see, someone more, another person more focused on mesh. But then it caught me off guard, the amount of excitement around it, just because of the lack of excitement or the lack of tangible adoption of the other tech that's been out there. Why do you think this time is different?
Well, I mean, it remains to be seen whether this time is different, right? So these things, they live off the network effect. So excitement is part of the resilience of these systems because they need to be run by individuals instead of just hoping that a cell phone provider will like put an antenna there and put you online. So I think the excitement definitely helps just from an infrastructure perspective. But like hardware today is definitely different than 10 years ago. The hardware in your phone is kind of incredible at this point, and the distances that your Bluetooth chip can traverse has gone up multiple times. The energy that it uses has gone down multiple times. So things are just getting better and better, and I just expect this to continue to do so. At the same time, I know that it has been attempted many times before, and I wouldn't call these projects that you mentioned failures. They just maybe never hit like a threshold where enough people used it, so it became useful to people, other than just people want to play around with it and try it out. And just to be clear, this remains to be seen for Bitchat too. But our technology is better, and the need just keeps going up. So I think with every day that we spend on this earth, we see more and more reasons why we need alternative infrastructure. And I think, like with things like Noster, if you combine it with other freedom technologies like Bitcoin, if you send around, if you use this infrastructure to send around eCash, which is one of the main reasons why I was like excited about it in the very first beginning. If we have many more things that we can do with it today than a couple of years ago. So we'll just have to keep trying it, and because we might have failed a couple of years ago, but in my mind, that's not a reason for to stop trying to fix these issues in the future. If we don't try it, we'll definitely never achieve the goals of these projects. So I don't see any reason to not try it out again. And as you said, the alternative is just centralized internet ISPs, and those come with so many problems, and no one is really working on improving that. There are a couple of projects here and there that try to be a better ISP, but they themselves need to be centralized systems. So decentralized systems are just harder to bootstrap, harder to build, harder to keep alive, but it doesn't mean that they cannot succeed. And we've seen this with Bitcoin, we've seen this with BitTorrent or Tor, and I hope and I believe that we can also achieve something in that regard with internet or communication infrastructure.
Yeah, I mean, Mesh specifically has an interesting chicken and egg adoption thing, which I mean is what we've seen with a lot of the responses by people who download Bitchat for the first time, right? Which is, oh, I downloaded it and I don't see anybody on it.
Yeah, that's
because more
this
so,
app,
like
I
there's
don't
like
see anyone.
yeah, I mean, for more so than other tech, right? Like Mesh has this massive adoption hurdle in the beginning, which is what leaves me cautiously optimistic that it hit the ground running with so much hype or so much excitement that we might be able to get through that adoption hurdle.
Look, yeah, so I mean, people need to know about it. So it needs to be popular in order to work. And the goal right now is not to replace the internet, right? It is to offer communication to islands of people. And there are many islands out there. So if there's an app that you can very easily just open the app, and within 2 seconds, you're connected to anyone around you. There are many use cases for this. It could be, as you said, it could be a festival, it could be a conference, right? A sports event. There are so many situations where people, not only because they don't have internet, but because they're not automatically connected to anyone around you. Like, imagine you're on a Bitcoin conference and you just want to send a link to anyone who's in the room. How do you do that?
Right.
Just announcing your location to use an internet service for it. One way would be post a link somewhere and then just project the QR code and then hope that people can scan it, right? So there's roundabout ways of trying to solve this issue, but really limiting communication to a geolocation, to a spatial extent, basically requires you to dox your location to an internet service today. So I could imagine that people will come up with situations or basically have things in mind already. It might be your warehouse, it might be your company or something where you don't want to use internet because you don't want people to make an account and say, hey, app, I'm now in Nashville and I would like to get all the messages that are addressed to Bitcoin Park or something like that, right? I don't want to dox my location that I'm in Bitcoin Park right now. So one of the ways is a mesh. And there, the hurdle is way smaller if you just think about small groups and people around you that you want to communicate with. And
Because then you
that's
don't have to
something,
deal with the adoption thing either. You just have to tell the people around you, download this app.
yeah, you can use it on demand. You can send around a few messages, share some information, and just close it again. Like you don't, you don't have to be connected to the global mesh all the time to make this thing useful. Another thing could be that you leave it running in the background and you walk around the city or something like that. You could kind of receive information, also send out information to devices or people around you. I don't know what kind of use cases that would entail. Some people were joking about, it's the new kind of flirting app for urban singles or something, that you find someone, like you see someone in the metro and you want to talk to them or something like that. Sounds a bit creepy, but you get the point. Like you might be someone who just like moves around and is interested in information being shared around you. And again, if you want to build this on the internet, you would have to track your location and share your location with a service. And with local connectivity, like with a mesh, you don't have to do that. So I think there are many ways to make this useful that even us cannot really think about yet. And for now, it's about providing the ability to do that, and people like automatically come up with interesting use cases for this kind of stuff.
Yeah, I mean, we're already kind of seeing it. So, like, one of my tangential focuses outside of Bitcoin has been developing relationships with local American ranchers and getting good quality meat to feed my family. I think strong communities support each other and have each other's back with this kind of thing, and good food is a key aspect of quality of life and a flourishing family. And a lot of these ranches right now, they use GMRS radios for kind of a similar purpose, right? So these are short, 5-mile line of sight radios. They just want to communicate among their ranch. Obviously, that requires greater distance than Bluetooth. But I think you could imagine a situation where, since all of this is open source, you have physical repeaters that you put around a ranch or something to accomplish that type of use case. And it could actually be more helpful than just pure audio communication, which is what they have to rely on with these short range radios.
Yeah, definitely. So these bridges, I think, will be super interesting. Like whatever the type of bridge will be, there are different ways to approach this. It could be like a radio bridge, like the one that you mentioned. It could be an internet bridge that uses Nostr, or like it could be also a direct Wi-Fi connection from your mesh to another mesh. So you could imagine a situation where all the phones around in the ranch, they can actually talk to all the other phones in the other ranch, right? So you don't have to go to the radio, pick up the microphone and say, "Hey, is anyone listening?" You could just send over a message and wait for a response, like we're used to with any chat app that we already use.
Yeah, I'm laughing because one of the reasons I love that both of my shows are live shows is the live chat and the live trolling that happens. And Stardust Official would like to remind us that GMRS stands for General Mobile Radio Service, and saying GMRS radios is something worthy of being trolled about. The other aspect here that I think is kind of cool for local communication is when you mix Cashu into it. And so then all of a sudden, not only do you have localized communication, but you have localized commerce. You can imagine something like a farmer's market, for instance, where everyone in the farmer's market is able to communicate with each other and pay each other. I saw that I believe you've integrated Cashu into the Android version of the app.
Both. I mean, I did on the Android, but we also integrated in our team. We also integrated into the iOS one, so we have both ready.
Is live in the iOS one right now?
No, neither. So we'll have to work a bit more on the Bitchat side of things. But as soon as that feels stable enough, then we'll like try to push the wallets on both sides. So yeah, this is super interesting. This is also like how it caught my attention primarily, because I've been researching a lot on different ways of paying with Cashu, and because Cashu uses eCash, eCash is a bearer token. You can kind of send it with any communication medium that you can think of. Currently, we're stuck in this realm of using QR codes for almost all things that we do, whether it's a Bitcoin Lightning invoice, whether it's a Cashu token that is transmitted via QR code, but also with fiat payments. Like if you think of Asia, for example, and for those who have traveled Asia, will know this, that QR codes are everywhere. You walk into a store, they show you a QR code, you're supposed to scan it with your camera. And, QR codes work, but they're super limited in what they can transport. And cameras never were made for this, right? It's kind of a hack that got stuck with us. So we're using cameras, super high throughput device with megabits of information per second to transmit like a couple bytes of data in form of a QR code. That's what we're currently doing. So we're also doing similar things for Cashu. So to keep innovating in that realm, we've been experimenting a lot with NFC, for example. So tap to pay with eCash, where you approach one phone to another phone and then send the eCash token directly from NFC. Also uses radio or electromagnetic waves to send from one phone to another. And that is also limited in throughput, but most importantly, it is limited by Apple to be able to do what you want to do. So we can do tap to pay with eCash already from an Android phone to an Android phone, or from a card to a phone. That is also very cool. But from Android to iPhone, you won't be able to send eCash in that direction. You can send from iPhone to Android, because Android just can do more, and it can receive, but an iPhone cannot receive on the NFC chip. And so there are many technical limitations if you want to send around data from phone to phone. So when I heard about Bitchat, I immediately thought about some experiments that we've been doing before with Cashu wallets, where we wanted to use Bluetooth Low Energy to send eCash from one device to another. And that seemed promising, because Apple allows you to do as much as you can do also with an Android phone. So that kind of opens up a way to onboard everyone onto this payment system or payment interaction. And so what I have in mind is basically, in the future, I hope that you'll be able to walk into a store, and then you'll have a $10 receipt or something. The person at the store will enter it in their terminal, and then it'll just pop up on your phone and say you want to pay $10. You press the button. You don't have to scan a QR code. You don't have to tap anything, but you'll just get a notification on your device, or you can push the payment from your device to the receiver, and they'll see a notification and can receive the payment. So this is what we had in mind, and we've been researching it before. And so when Bitchat came around, we're like, yeah, fuck yeah, this is exactly what we need to try this with. So what we did is basically the opposite. Instead of implementing Bluetooth into a Cashu wallet, we went the other way, and we implemented a Cashu wallet into Bitchat. And we did that with our library called CDK, which is the Cashu Dev Kit, which is based on Rust. And it makes it extremely easy to build wallets and implement it into things. So it's a Rust library that does all the Cashu stuff for you. And it's using the Rust library, it just allows you to build Cashu wallets extremely easily and super fast. So with this library, we're still kind of in the process of pushing it out and also putting the word out there because it's so new. The fact that you can do this is still super new, but essentially it brought down the IQ requirement for building a Cashu wallet from maybe 130 to 70 now. Like you can just implement a Cashu wallet within a couple minutes into your application with that. So that's what we did. We took Bitchat for iOS and Bitchat for Android. We took CDK and added bindings for it for the programmers who know what this means. For those who don't know what this means, bindings is basically like the glue between the library that we're using and the application where we want to implement it to. So we took the CDK library and just put it into Bitchat Android and Bitchat iOS, and within a couple of hours, we had fully functioning Cashu wallets in both of these applications, completely independently implemented. And that was it. So we had like a little wallet icon in the Bitchat app. And when you press it, it just opens a Bitcoin wallet that just looks like an ordinary Cashu wallet. And with that wallet, you can charge it with Lightning. Then you'll have some sats on your Bitchat wallet app. And then you can go in the chat. You can either in the direct message from me to you, or even in the public chat, you can just drop some sats in there. So the interface was you have this typical like cyberpunk interface of Bitchat. So you write /pay and then the amount in Satoshis and a comment if you like. You press send, and then it drops this payment blob in the chat that pops up everywhere and says like there's a 200 Satoshi payment for you, and you can press redeem, and it ends up in your Cashu wallet that is built into your Bitchat app. So this is super cool because first eCash is bearer, so we can use Bluetooth to send it around. But what's also very cool is that the payer still doesn't require internet to make that payment. Mind you, the receiver needs internet in that case because otherwise you cannot prevent double spending. So one of the parties needs internet. So you're kind of leaving this fully offline realm and require at least one person to have internet, but the other person can pay without internet. So this it's like this shop situation. You walk into a store, you buy a shirt, they say $20, and you just like open your wallet, press a button, $20 just immediately drops into the chat. You don't need to be online. It just happens instantly and always works, and the payment is done. So that's where we're trying to go.
I mean, what people don't realize with that is already the standard with traditional mobile payments. Like if you use Apple Pay, the payer actually does not need to be online. Like if you're in the developing world, you could be like in the middle of the jungle, and if someone has an Apple Pay point of sale, your phone doesn't have to have internet. You just tap to pay at that point, and the receiver has internet and is able to then process the payment and confirm the payment. And that's one of the reasons why Apple Pay works so seamlessly when you use it, and there's no lag there. So that's already the standard. Cashu kind of brings that standard into the Bitcoin realm. I have a quick question for you. Just in that one use case where you're like dropping it into the local group chat, let's say it's a Bitcoin conference. If you're dropping it into the local group chat, that becomes like a race condition for who tries to redeem it. It's like whoever gets internet first, right?
Exactly. Yeah, it's like leaving little crumbs of Satoshis in the Bluetooth chat and seeing like who gets it first. But as you said, like the situation where the payer doesn't have internet but the receiver has internet is super common. That's the way how credit cards work. So just like to add on what you said, that's how Apple Pay works. That's also how Google Pay works. But that's also how credit card tap to pay works. And that's the reason why Apple Pay and Google Pay works this way is because of the credit cards. And like how a credit card offline tap to pay credit card or your offline tap to pay Apple Pay works is by downloading tokens from the Apple Pay server. So it is a little bit similar to how it works with eCash actually. So you when your phone is online and you have Apple Pay, your phone goes to Apple Pay server and says like, I have this credit card company XYZ, and I'd like to download like 20 offline tokens. And then the Apple Pay or Google Pay server gives you these 20 offline tokens. And then you can walk around in the middle of nowhere and just tap your phone. And the reason why it's instant, as you said, is because your phone doesn't need internet. Just the receiver needs internet, which is typically a store owner, so they have an internet connection often, and you're probably like the mobile phone user who's like in the mall without cell connection, but it still works on your phone. And that's because the token that you received while you had internet that is on your phone just flows directly from your phone via NFC to the payment terminal. And then the payment terminal takes that token, in the case of Apple Pay and Google Pay, takes that token and sends it off to the internet and says like, hey, am I allowed to, is this user legit, and can they make a payment, and so on and so forth. And that executes the payment in the backend on the internet for you. So for eCash, it kind of works the same way, but for Bitcoin and with privacy. And that's like the critical differentiating factor between these payment systems is we can also have tap to pay or offline payer situations for Bitcoin when we use eCash, but plus insane privacy on top of that. So for Apple Pay and Google Pay, the internet server needs to know who you are because the token that you send is not the money. It is like an access key to your credit card, basically. And that needs to hit the internet and need to identify you. In the case of eCash, the token itself is the representation of the Satoshi. And then you send that over to the payment terminal, and the payment terminal does one swap with the eCash mint over the internet, and the payment is done. And the mint doesn't need to know who you are. The receiver doesn't need to know who you are. In fact, no one can figure out who you are because of the privacy properties of eCash itself. So I'm super bullish on that use case. It is definitely like something that we're going to focus more. We do already focus a lot on this. And the fact that you're offline gives you incredible privacy because your phone doesn't need to go online. You don't even leave a trace like saying, hey, I turned on my phone or something like that. Like you don't need to go online. And it's instant because there is no, I need to connect first and like get into my PayPal account and log in and like wait for the delay and shit like that. You just send over the money and you're done with it.
Yeah. So, first off, a huge shout out to Soap Miner, who zapped 21,000 sats. Has great soap.
Nice.
And is a good support. Is a legendary supporter of the show. I appreciate your support. And we have Pablo, who's a legend himself, building in the Nostr ecosystem, who zapped 21,000 sats, saying, "Appreciate you, gents. Thank you guys for supporting the show. It really it means more than the money. As the support comes in, it keeps me going. Yeah, on the Cashew piece, I mean, this is where it's like all these freedom tech projects are like coming together. It's like it all compounds and gets super powerful. The offline component, I mean, basically a Cashew token, you can it's just a long string of text. So however you can transmit a long string of text, you can transmit a Cashew token. And I mean, even you could imagine a lot of situations where there's like a limited trust environment, where people can do commerce where both people are offline, and then at some point in the future, the receiver needs to go online if he doesn't think the person's going to scam them, and then redeem it at that point. And I mean, we're already in, like, people don't realize, like, you go and you pay with the credit card, like that merchant can get charged back like 30 days later. And that's a way, less trusted environment, or it is you don't, you go into like a J. Crew or something, that random minimum wage employee does not even know who you are. But if you're in like a farmer's market or something, and I'm going there every week and I'm paying someone, like that farmer doesn't necessarily need to be connected to the internet for like 4 hours or 5 hours. And then later he can connect to the internet and redeem. And if I scam him, like he'll never sell me meat again. Yeah.
Yeah, proof of punch. If you're close enough to someone, then the probability of getting scammed goes down a lot. But yeah, so if we start comparing ourselves to the fiat system, like it's going to be an easy game because
nice.
Like these in the fiat system, like it's so fucked. We don't even need to start, but let's do it for fun. So in the fiat game, they achieve most of the security in quotes security by basically denying you access to the hardware itself. So you have kind of like a hardware level trust system. So yeah, of course, like if we want to lower the bar that much, we can definitely do the same as well. So in a credit card, for example, when you tap to pay with the credit card, as you said, you don't know how much that terminal is going to deduct from your credit card. Like there might be a maximum limit, but like, is it like $2 or is it like $25, maybe $200, depending on what your credit card allows. So you don't control that. The reason why you in quotes trust the payment is because the terminal itself is like attested hardware that is built by a company that kind of says, trust me, bro, we built a terminal that doesn't rug your users. Same for the credit card itself. The credit card itself has this chip on it that everyone knows, like this golden thingy, and there's a CPU inside there. And basically what this credit card kind of assumes is that you won't be able to open it up and just disassemble the thing and take out like these tokens that I talked about before that someone will be able to steal. So like if you say that, okay, we'll trust the hardware to not allow you to double spend, or we'll just trust the hardware to not rug the customer, then yes, we can do all of those things as well. But obviously, like that also means that the applicability of these systems is super limited. So you need like a certified device to receive credit card payment, or at least this changed a lot in recent years, and by now you can also use like an Apple phone for it. Obviously, Apple phone is like super walled garden thing, but there's much more hardware today that supports this. But in generally speaking, if you introduce hardware level safety, then we can do fully offline transactions as well. It basically just depends on whether your phone will allow you to double spend the token that you just spent or not. But if you approach this from a fully open source perspective, which we do, then we kind of have to assume that anyone can open up everything and everything is observable, and you can just, you can take the software, you can change it, and then start messing around with the system. So we kind of like try to find a minimal viable trustless or least amount of trust system that still works without knowing your counterparty, or without having to stand across them and being reach of a punch in case the punch is needed, right? So for example, internet applications where you cannot necessarily just punch someone in the face when they try to rug you.
Yeah, I mean, this is it's a complete game changer. I mean, I want to talk about, first off, we should have mentioned it earlier, but we didn't. So that's on us. But Bitchat is not available in the Play Store. So if you're going to the normal App Store on Google and there is a Bitchat listed there, that's not the official distribution of it. It might be a scam.
Yeah, don't download that. That is like a big warning sign, and like this is on me. I've been trying to like really wrestling with Google. I haven't been able to put it up myself yet, but I'm working on it. So don't download Bitchat from the Play Store as of July 30th, which is today. And as soon as it hits the Play Store in an official way, then you'll know. But for now, you can go to bitchat.free. That's our domain. That's the official domain. And there you find links and resources for the trusted application where you can find it without being afraid of getting scammed. So for the iOS version, you can go to the Apple App Store, just search it on your iPhone and download Bitchat. For Android, don't get it from the Play Store just yet. It's a fake guy who took my application and just uploaded it to Google himself. And it's basically impossible to take it down for me at this point without kind of like, it's terrible. Let's not even get into it, but yeah, don't get it from there. Get it from the GitHub, which you find the link on bitchat.free.
Or you can get it from the Zap Store, right? Zapstore.dev, the Nostr-enabled Android App Store.
Unfortunately, it's not there yet. It is on my list. It is on my list. It's not on Zap Store. I was joking about this because people keep pushing me to do it. I am going to do it. Don't worry, guys, I'm going to do it. But there's also F-Droid, which I also need to do. But like,
It's not an F-Droid either.
One thing F at a time. It is nowhere except on GitHub. Don't get it anywhere but on GitHub.
Okay, so go to bitchat.free, which is a weak, kind of a weak domain name, but bitchat.free, and download the APK, and then you can sideload it onto your Android device by just installing the APK. And APK is like an Android application file that you can just install any application. It's one of the best parts about Android. I do think it's funny. I see at bitchat.com, it goes to the domain owner's tweet about owning bitchat.com. So what he has it redirected to right now, which also I think just goes to the unexpected hype and excitement that came out of the project. I mean, Dorsey clearly did not try and secure a domain name before tweeting it out. But that is what it is. Bitchat.free. What I wanted, yeah. See, Pablo's like he didn't get bitch.at. Who has bitch.at?
No, I tried. I tried, Pablo. I tried. The Austrians, which is AT. The Austrians don't let you use the domain bitch dot something.
Oh, fair enough. They're very buttoned up over there. It's like maybe I try and be a friendly tourist, but when I was in Austria, it was they really did not like me, specifically in Vienna. I think they're just still salty about losing World War II.
Absolutely.
But what I wanted to talk about, but I just wanted the Android disclosure out there before people go download the wrong app. Is for those of us watching, I mean, it was quite remarkable that you were able to create a native Android app so quickly. I mean, I thought you might have had advance notice, but it sounds like you didn't even have advance notice, and you were able to make a native Android app and release it within a matter of days. That might be one of the single most powerful things about this vibe coding movement. You want to talk about that process a little bit?
Yeah, definitely. Let's talk about that, because that's one of the biggest learnings that I had while working on this, except for all the things that I learned about Bluetooth. But yeah, so I didn't know about this before you. I learned about it at the same time. I just sat down and did it because I've had quite some experience with AI, and using agents. But I think everyone out there could have done so too, or at least if you know a little bit about programming, then kind of you can do it too. And so I'll dive a bit into the process and what I learned about it. So first of all, what I used for it was mainly Goose by Block and Cursor. Mostly Goose because it allows you to easily switch between models, and the model that I used heavily was mostly Claude 4 and Sonnet 4. And the process of it was basically like downloading Jack's implementation and then exploring it a bit by hand, and then using various LLMs to first describe the software to me. So I used something with a large context window. I think it must have been probably Gemini that I started with, is to just, explore this huge code base. At that point, it was already a big code base. So it's hard to get an overview. Like, what are the features? Give me a summary of what this thing can do. So I get this response from the bot and I see like, okay, this is what it can do and so on. And then from there on, I start acting as a project manager, less than like a coder, but a project manager, saying like, okay, now this is an iOS version of our application and we want to launch like an Android version of our application. We want it to be 100% compatible with the iOS version. Now, before we start coding, let's start with an implementation plan, like as if you would start planning a project to build an app in a company. You usually don't just start building it, but you make a plan of all the individual steps that you need to scratch off, like one by one. What is this? We need first to implement like the public chat, and then we need to implement like liking things, and then we need to implement like that sidebar and blah 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 blah. Like you make a list of all the things that need to be done step by step. And what I also do is I I tell the bot, like, give me a list of things that need to be done, and also like what are the requirements in each step, and what kind of what requirements make that step fulfilled, like let you fulfill that step. So I get a long list of things that need to be done in order to port this to Android, and I look at the list, and I take that output from an LLM and I start a new one. And with that LLM, I talk to as if it's my developer. And I take my implementation plan that I planned before and give it to that LLM, and I say, now we're starting now with step one. Like step one is build the entire like foundation of the app, create all the directories, create all the folders and files, and register the app, create like a Android manifest and so on. Like maybe you need to know a little bit about Android before, but to be honest, like you can probably also do it without knowing anything about Android first. And then, so that's how you start. You do it step by step. The most important thing is that you have a list of things that you want to work through, because LLMs get lost along the way, and you need some way to bring them back to the task that you want to make them work on. So that was the process. And I did this for a couple of hours, back and forth, looking at the code sometimes. But most of the time in the beginning, I didn't even really look at the code itself. I'm just like, looking at the results, whether it compiles or not. And if it doesn't compile, the LLM kind of knows that it made a mistake itself and tries to fix it. So half a day or so goes by doing that. And then at some point I had this working version with the basic features, like no direct messages yet, but like the group chat, for example, for Android. And it also started to look quite similar to the iOS app, because I also told it, like, make it look exactly the same, use the same color scheme, use the same fonts and so on to make it look the same. And you end up with this basic version, and then from there on you keep improving it. So you do step by step by step by step. You kind of need to know where you want to go, but as long as you can express this in a meaningful way, the LLM most of the time can get the job done. So that's how I built Bitchat in the beginning. That's why it went so quickly, because I was basically just 100% vibes and just observing what the thing is doing and trying to kind of steer it in the correct direction. Now, mind you, with every vibe coded project that I've done so far, and I've done many of them like in the last year, and is what you see is that the proportion of vibe against manual coding goes down as the project matures. It gets more and more complex. The LLMs tend to make more and more mistake over time, and the context gets larger and larger because the project grows. So things get more complicated as you go. So the need to intervene by fixing things by hand just grows over time. One more thing I want to mention here is noise encryption. So Bitchat uses a pretty nifty handshake pattern called noise XX handshake. It gives you forward secrecy, which is basically saying, like, if someone gets access to your phone today, they cannot read all the messages that you're going to write tomorrow or that you have written yesterday. So kind of like make sure that even if you get compromised today, that you have secrecy forward and backwards in time. And so that used the noise XX handshake. And that part, for example, was just heavily manual coding. So as soon as you get like super advanced and there is not much for the LLM to draw on knowledge from the internet, then you need to go in there and become like a coder again instead of being just a project manager. But yeah, so as I said, like the amount of work, manual work, just usually goes up over time. And especially if you don't, if you don't if you aren't careful, especially over time as the project grows, you can also maneuver yourself into a dead end where the project just grows and grows and gets bloated and bloated to a point where it just becomes like a complete mess, and it becomes extremely hard to put it into a state again where it just it works again or looks nice again, or isn't like a complicated mess with lots of dead code that isn't used and so on. So that is something I think you learn as a vibe coder as you gain more experience. But like the first steps is like fully wiped, fully automated. And that's also something like, that's also the reason why anyone can do this. Especially me, I'm not a front-end developer even. Like I'm not an Android developer, first of all, but I'm not even a front-end developer. I'm usually deep in the trenches, in the machine room, like interacting with command line interfaces at the best, and not really good at like moving buttons around and so on and so forth. And I don't even know how that works on Android. At this point, I do know, but before that, I didn't really understand exactly how Android front-end development works, especially with Kotlin. So I learned all of that. Without knowing, you can just do things. That's my message. Like, you can just do things, and today you can do things a lot more than just a year ago. So that's the process. And a slightly more nerdy take, but I think even more valuable lesson that I had there is the following that I want to share with the listeners, especially the computer scientists that listen. So, as you said, as you know, there are two Bitchat apps. There's the iOS version by Jack. It is written in Swift. That is the native language for iOS, for iPhones. And there's the Android version that is written in Kotlin. That is the native programming language for Android. So these are two completely separate projects that have completely different programming languages. And I'm not a Kotlin dev, and I'm just going to assume that Jack is also not a Swift dev. But we were both able to build in programming languages that we're not very familiar with. Obviously, we both know how to program. So you can use a programming language that you've never used before by relying on AI. And now here comes the nifty and super interesting part. And I think that's going to change, kind of like be an industry changing thing, is usually when you start making an app and you want it to be available on iOS and on Android at the same time, and you're a small team, let's say you're like a startup, you have like 3 people, you have maybe 5 people, and you just got your seed round and you have a couple $100,000 on your bank account, and you want to build this MVP and you want to push it out to the world, and you want it to be available for iOS and Android. What you usually do, and this is very common, is you build a cross-platform app first, because your team is small and your resources are limited and the time that you have is also very limited. What you do is like you do the min-max principle. You're like least amount of effort, a maximum amount of result is usually a cross-platform app. What does that mean? There are some programming languages out there that work on iOS and Android at the same time. So these might be Kotlin multi-platform, or Flutter, or React Native. Those are kind of the popular ones that many companies that get started, they use these languages first, and they build the app in a very small team, like could be a single person, maybe 2 people working on a single app, a single code base. And then you compile it to both Android and iOS, and then you ship your product. And if you grow and if you're successful, then you get more funding, you grow your team. And then at some point, maybe a half a year, maybe a year later, you sit down again and say, now guys, okay, we're now getting serious. We have some traction. Let's now build a native Android app and a native iOS app side by side, because now we have like a team of 20 people or something. So typically what you would have done before vibe coding is to go that round. First, build a multi-platform app, grow the company, then build 2 native apps, and then ship that to the world. This is what, for example, I think Uber and like so many companies do exactly that. Now, what we've just learned, at least with this experience, is that things are changing a lot in that regard. So what you can do today is you could start the way we did it with Bitchat, is first, one person goes ahead and builds an iOS app just completely by themselves, completely disregarding Android, just puts out an iOS app. And then a second person, or even the same person, doesn't need to be an Android developer, can take this finished software and just put it into an LLM and say, now translate it to native Android. And what would have taken like 20 people in your company or 10 people in your company to build 2 apps and to maintain 2 apps at the same time, keep them all with feature parity at the same time, now works with essentially either one person or maybe two people. So the barrier to entry to build native apps has dropped significantly. And this is just because the language that we share now is not React Native, but it's English. Both of us can speak English, so we can just both compile English to either Swift or to either Kotlin. And so that's how we ended up with two native implementations of Bitchat. And I think this is actually this is the game changer. This might be sound a bit unimportant for those who don't know how, who are not into software development, but for those who are working in companies today who hear this should be super excited about this and maybe also change their plans of how they want to build their apps, because at this point you can literally just do things so much easier. Especially now, I'm gonna be done with my monologue, I promise, but especially if you build something with a shared library. Now let's say we want to build a Cashu wallet, a native Cashu wallet for Android and for iOS. And we have this amazing library called CDK that is written in Rust. So basically all of the complicated stuff is already done in Rust, and that's been cared for. Now, instead of hiring two people, that one building an Android app and one person building an iOS app, what I would do today is probably hire no one and just take the Rust library that we have and build a very slim and thin layer of Kotlin and a thin layer of Swift around it that is just the UI and almost doesn't do anything else, just the UI that is native in that platform's language, and have a super performant, super native looking and native feeling app that you usually would have needed a larger team of software developers for. So extremely excited. Things are changing. I think programmers out there should be most afraid of what's happening right now. If you're not using these tools today and you're not in the process of mastering these tools, then just think about what's going to be in 5 years, and think about what a startup will look like in 5 years, and whether you'll be one of the people who keeps their job or one of the people who will lose their job, because many of us will lose their jobs. That much is clear. A company that has to decide between 3 Jedis being able to use AI really well or 20 midwits that still rely on just complete manual coding, they don't care about the how to do your profession correctly. They care about the efficiency of the operation. And so this is a kind of a warning sign as well to the developers, is learn these tools, learn to use these tools, and especially learn it today, because in 2 years they will be very different. These tools will change very fast, and you should be out there. You should be on top of all these things, and increase your productivity by multiple X. And I didn't know what it means to enter the singularity. I couldn't imagine what it means that a person could 10x their productivity. My mind cannot comprehend what it means to, I will never be able to read 10 times as fast or to think 10 times as fast, but I can build code now 10 times as fast. And that's going to change everything. I'm pretty sure about that.
Love it.
Lol.
First off, we have Eggy, maintainer and creator of mpub.cash, zap 10,000 sats, and he says Calle's Bitchat port made me do a 180 on vibe coding. If you know what you are doing, vibe coding puts you more in the position of a software architect. Modules that are self-contained, that you can clearly define an interface for, are a one-shot 99% of the time. Eggy, I have... my Signal contact information is on odell.xyz. If you want to come on Dispatch sometime, I would love to have you. And we have the tester zapped 42,000 sats. He says Cashu and Nostr will take Bitcoin-based payments to the next level. I like how nut zaps are easier to verify than LN zaps. We just need JB55 to come around. Calle.
No, we don't.
We don't. That's the beautiful thing. You don't have to ask permission. Never apologize for your monologues. These are my favorite conversations I have on Dispatch. And I don't know if the freaks have noticed, but a lot of feedback I've received from our past conversations is to bite my tongue and not interrupt and let you run and let you go. And I will say that I thoroughly enjoy it. Not only do you have a fascinating mind, but also you do not like using video, so I get to turn off my video, do some free weight exercises, and just listen to you run, and it's a joy from my perspective too.
Great. Now that's on my mind.
Well, that's what, but I get caught off guard when you end the monologue.
Can't unsee.
What was I going to say? I was going to say, I mean, the cool part is, so then the user gets the benefits of native apps, and then the developer gets the benefits of cross-platform, because I think it's really hard to hit scale without cross-platform. It's really hard to recommend tools without being able to just blindly say, download this app regardless of what platform they're using. When you have to say like, oh, use Amethyst on Android or Nostura on iPhone, it like just adds more friction to the recommendation and the conversation. But when I'm just laughing at the live chat now, but when you have cross-platform, it's just way easier to hit scale. It's way easier to get adoption. So we get the benefits of native with the benefits of cross-platform at the same time. It's just what a time to be alive. It seems incredibly powerful. So last piece here, because we're going kind of long, but you and Dorsey and Rabble and Gleason and Jeff, I think I named everybody, have this vibe coding collective called Android and other stuff. Is the goal here?
It's not a vibe coding collective. No,
that's definitely what your external messaging has portrayed it as. So I'm just going to keep calling it a vibe coding collective until you prove me otherwise. And Jack specifically seeded it with $10 million. Is the goal here for maintenance going forward of Bitchat is being handled by that organization, or how does, like, now that you did it, now that you created a native Android app that's cross compatible with iOS, like how is Bitchat maintenance going forward? Is it completely separate from other stuff, or how you think about it?
So yeah, and other stuff isn't directly Bitchat related, but so what we're a collective, and we want to build Nostr stuff, and specifically we want to build like high quality Nostr experiences that we feel are still lacking. So one of the issues with the Nostr ecosystem, although like that is one of the best things about Nostr, is that we have so many different things, is the lack of quality of the few things. And one of the examples of like a really high quality product out there is Primal, for example, which unfortunately or fortunately is a VC funded company. So I mean, all power
What's
to them.
What's the issue with that?
I use Primal too, right? It's a great product, but Primal, at the end of the day, needs to follow their investors' interests too. Like they are not.
I'm the investor. You don't have to talk about me in the third person.
Well, I I mean, as long as you stay true to yourself, maybe it works out. But generally speaking, the approach has proven to multiple times that VC funded projects themselves are not immune to external influences. And at some point, there will always be a point where you have to decide whether you're going to maximize the goals of your investor or maximize the original goals that you have set to yourself. So we want to just break out of that loop and still be able to like build a cohesive group of people that work on one thing together. So Bitchat itself is independent from that. It has just started like completely independent, but as as I'm working on it, and as the Cashu people are working on it, obviously it's probably going to play a role also in that environment. But our original goal with that collective is not Bitchat itself. So I will have to maintain Bitchat, and I will also have to get more support and people and help from people to keep it alive and make it just work really well. But with other stuff, we want to focus mainly on Nostr experiences. And so we have a couple projects that we already started doing. One of the things that we've built so far was Chorus, which was a kind of a community forum prototype that we've built, also vibe coded. That's why also the association with vibe coding is so strong. But we put it out in a couple of days to prove to ourselves how far we can go with by relying on AI. But we're all very experienced developers in that collective. So we know what the limits of it are and how much vibe versus non-vibe is necessary to make software maintainable over time. So Chorus was one stepping stone to our larger goal. And our larger goal essentially is to create a community app experience on top of Nostr that can rival the big tech community platforms as well. So we're not going to build like another Twitter clone for Nostr. For now, we're focusing on building a community app platform. So we're still, it's in the design, and I don't know like how much of it was already shared or not, but essentially you can think of Chorus, which is like this forum experience, as just one single component of what we're trying to aim at. So we're super frustrated in the collective. We're super frustrated about the different choices of how you can manage communities today outside of the Nostr sphere. So you can think of, for example, Discord or Slack, or these chat-based community apps that are out there. Some of the people out there might have also set up a Matrix server at some point and know how hard it is to just set that up. And then even if you do so, you cannot take your identity and just move somewhere else. So there are many problems of like organizing a group of people that there are solutions on the internet right now. And either those solutions are commercial, company funded, like VC funded, or companies that kind of need to trap you in their ecosystem. I'm talking about, for example, Discord, Microsoft Teams, Slack, and so on. Or you have these kind of janky, hard to use and hard to set up systems like Matrix, for example, for your own community. And for us as developers, these are essential tools that we rely on every day. We use this all the time. Like we have for Cashu, we have our own Matrix server. We unfortunately also use Telegram a lot for community stuff, for like open community where everyone can just join and start asking questions. But we also use, for internal communications, we also use Signal a lot. So we're kind of scattered around different platforms, and like basically all of them are bad, and none of them gives us what we need. And so what we want to focus on, what we have already started working on, is a community tool that we dubbed Universes. For now, that's the name that we go with for now, is that we want to build something that you can set up for yourself, for your community, that you can host yourself, or you can also let others host for you. But it uses Nostr for your identity, so you can never be trapped inside that thing. You can always take your community and just move it somewhere else. And in our group of people, so you mentioned Brabo, Alex, Gleason, Jeff G, and me, we bring all the components together to build like a really slick and safe and useful experience. So we have private communications built on white noise and MLS that is going to be like integrated into this as well. So you can use it as your replacement for your Signal group or your Matrix group, for example. And we have Gleason, who's like a OG in communities, has built so many platforms already and knows exactly how they behave. And Rebel is a master in UI and UX research, who's done a lot of work also in researching how people use Nostr already. And I'm kind of the money and Bitcoin guy, so bringing Cashu in there allowing us to use money within those systems and to allow them to fundraise within those systems and pay each other and all the, build marketplaces and so on top of that. So what we are thinking about is not a super app, I wouldn't want to call it that way, but like a competition to community applications that already exist, that is built on Nostr, that doesn't necessarily feel like Nostr, but allows you to have like safe and secure communication that is extendable and doesn't lock you in. And that's what we're working on. So Bitchat might become a part of that, just because like there are several people in the group who are interested in working on it, but it's not our main focus.
Okay. I mean, I want to start with the earlier comments, because this is something that I think about a lot with my two major focuses, which is OpenSats and 1031. So I also came to the conclusion years ago that VCs were a key part of the problem, and like VCs specifically, like traditional, hyper successful, massively money deploying VCs were, and their incentive structure was corrupting a lot of what was being built.
Agreed.
And specifically, so OpenSats actually came first. I mean, 1031 was in its infancy. I launched OpenSats, and then 1031 actually, the two founders of 1031, my partners over there, Grant and Jonathan, were one of the first checks into OpenSats. They helped get us off the ground, because they loved what we were doing. But what I noticed really quickly was there is just not that much money going around in the open source ecosystem, in the open source charitable ecosystem, right? And while that obviously, seems like the best path, charity money that is forever and doesn't come with strings attached. If you look at the donors, it's just really not that many people. I mean, the OpenSats, we've raised like mid 30 million, like $35 million, $36 million. Most of that was Jack. I'm very excited for what and other stuff and you guys are doing over there. That was also seeded by Jack with 10 million. Probably the most successful, sustainable, open source, freedom focused project is Signal, which was acquired by Twitter in like, I think 2011. And then Jack, because Jack wanted to encrypt DMs on Twitter, never encrypted DMs on Twitter, partially probably because of a lot of like the VC big money interests, but then released Signal open source. It was previously called Text Secure, released that project open source. And then one of the WhatsApp co-founders got mad at the Facebook acquisition and then seeded money into that project. So a lot of the roads lead back to Jack. And so my conclusion has come to the fact that money is what supercharges all of these things. Capital is what supercharges all of these things. And finding, now that we have Bitcoin, finding sustainable models for open source projects is really the holy grail. Because if God forbid something happens to Jack and that funding stops, where do we sit? And if you want to like think about the scale of something like 1031, which is my for-profit venture, we've deployed $200 million. OpenSats deploys about $1 million a month. We're quite proud of that. I think that's a scale that most open source charities have never been able to grasp. We send it all out in Bitcoin, but still, that dichotomy of $35 million raised versus $200 million raised is like completely different. It's just like it's just on a whole nother scale. So if the goal is sustainable open source projects, I think there's actually a strong path that can be happened in the for-profit world. And Primal is actually a really good example here, since you mentioned it, and I appreciate the good words that you mentioned towards that project, because I think Milian and his tiny team of like 7 people get a lot of shit but they're trying to do things the right way. I mean, that project is a completely false stack, right? Everything they build is open source, and they're trying to be profitable and sustainable with additional, with like services built on top that are optional, right? I think that's the harder path. I think Primal is another good example here where we're the largest investor by far. It's probably just angels that have invested because traditional VC doesn't want to try that path. It's the harder path. The harder path is releasing open source software and trying to monetize ethically. They realize there is an issue that needs to be solved. Balaji was just on A16Z's podcast, who's like probably A16Z's like the big evil empire. And what did he shield? He shielded Farcaster and Base because they can be predatory and dump shit coins on retail, and do a bunch of different ad sales and other things there. But they can't do that on Nostr. But he diagnosed the core part of the problem, which is being able to communicate without permission, and being able to verify things without permission in an AI deepfake type of world. So I just want to push back a little bit on the idea that something being investment funded is inherently bad. I think profit leads to human flourishing, it leads to sustainability. And at the core, you probably and other stuff have the same problem. It's like if you don't find a sustainable business model for these projects, you are going to be relying on Jack's funding forever to maintain them. And in our case, if we don't find sustainable profit or sustainable funding, then us as investors would have to keep funding Primal forever, and we don't want to be in that situation.
I agree with most of what you said. It's just I need to make a distinction there. I'm not strictly talking about non-profit, right? So it would be the best outcome of this is finding a sustainable business model. And I think this is something, that just some open source projects have managed, and it's certainly a possibility. The big difference, I think, is whether you're kind of, in quotes, like captured from the beginning or not. And yes, so not every open source project can start off with like charitable funding, and this is also, there are lots of projects that emerged from just funding from OpenSats itself, but the individual like projects themselves often have the goal of becoming profitable at some point, right? So the ratio of what works and what doesn't work, I don't have numbers whether fully open source charitable funded projects have a lower probability of becoming sustainable at some point or not. But it doesn't mean that just because you start off with a donation that you cannot find ways to make profit over the long term. And this is certainly like a possibility with the projects that we're doing with and other stuff. So we have these different pillars of individual people working on different things. Like, for example, Jeff G is working on white noise, and obviously, right now, I'm not sure if they have a profit motive or profit model yet or not, but it certainly is something that they can be looking forward to in the future. And the same goes also for Cashu. Cashu right now is a fully non-profit, open source, fully open project that has kind of lots of contributors funded from various different sources that we're extremely lucky and super thankful for, that we are receiving the support in form of grants to individual contributors. But at some point, there should be a business coming out of this that also can sustain itself, because I don't want to bet on the charitable outlook, just the fact that we can get donations forever, and this is what we're already seeing. And for example, for Cashu, if I can make that example, is there are maybe now 5 to 6 businesses that use Cashu in some way or other, and some of them even use it as their core, product in their business. So protocols can be a platform for businesses to build on top. But I think we both would agree that the protocol itself should have no other incentives than increasing freedom and accessibility and empowering people to build stuff on top of that. So being profitable is not evil, but choosing your investors correctly in the beginning is an extremely hard thing to do. And most projects, they are not in a position where they can decide who invests in them. And many of them just need to take anything that they are offered. And at some point, this leads to conflict. And it has led to conflict over and over and over again. You have made the examples before. So whether it's WhatsApp or whatever, right? So hopefully, and this is also my hope for Nostr and for Bitcoin, we are seeing this. Like on Bitcoin, we're seeing more and more profitable businesses built on top. And I think it's also very hard on Bitcoin. I don't know what the ratio of profitable businesses are for 1031, and that might be the same for other VCs as well. So it's just a hard business, and the probability of being profitable is very low. Whether you start off with VC funding, or you're bootstrapped by your own money, or you start as a non-profit protocol and then start a business on top of it, right?
No, I mean, look, I agree. I think that was very well said. It's definitely the harder path. I just think it's the goal, regardless, is to try and find sustainable funding in a open system. And I think people seeing firsthand trying to raise money for open source projects, it's quite difficult. It's way more difficult than people that are not exposed to it realize. And it's definitely the more difficult path. And I mean, I will just say that on the 1031 side, we try and do things differently and practice what we preach. But we're very rare in that front. And most Bitcoin companies that are trying to build on top of open protocols without like vendor lock-in and stuff like that have a hell of a time raising. And it's no coincidence that most of the time, I think the number is 90% of the time we're the exclusive investor because people just aren't willing to take the risk. And I'm well aware that most VCs say this, but we are actually incredibly founder friendly and make sure that the founders retain control over their baby and the vision. We're not trying to come in here and push people around and tell them how to do things. We're just here to support where we can.
That is amazing. And I mean, both of us, we know that 1031 is not representative, right? So you guys are doing a great job, and you're just different than the rest of the landscape out there. And like the amount of bullshit that I get in my inbox is incredible.
I bet. I'm aware. You should see the bullshit I see.
Money on stuff.
Some of the pitches and some of the investor calls I've had are quite infuriating. But the hard path is, I think, the better path, and we just got to take it. Anyway, I consider you a very close friend. I have a ton of respect for you. I'm really grateful to have you building in the ecosystem, and it's just I felt the need to push back a little bit that basically like the one major negative we see about Primal specifically in the Nostr ecosystem is that they're trying to be profitable and that they've received investment. But I would just add in there just really quick is like the amount of investment they've received is quite negligible compared to who they're trying to compete with. And we're going to try and make that money go a long way. Calle, this was awesome rip. I always enjoy our rips. It went longer than I was planning. The family that we have that homeschools her 3 sons, where my son, my toddler, goes, canceled on us today. So I left the wife in charge of the children.
Got to do what you got to do, man.
I got to get back to that. But I think last time we said like every 6 months we're going to do an update. Can we continue this trend? These are my favorite conversations.
Of course, I love talking to you. I'm very happy to join you again in 6 months or earlier, whenever it works.
Awesome. I'm down. I mean, I'm down for earlier once again. I think things are moving quickly in a good way. So let's keep up the momentum. You have any final thoughts for the listeners before we wrap?
I mean, what I want to say is just hoping that someone out there is listening and doesn't know what to do with their job or their life and feels inspired by the open source world that we're building. And I hope that if you're a developer out there and you don't like your corporate job, that you can consider coming into the Bitcoin ecosystem or Nostr ecosystem and helping us to move this kind of revolutionary project forward. We need every single person who can help. So if you feel like you can contribute to this in any way, then talk to me, talk to anyone who can show you around, and we can use anyone who can help us bring Bitcoin to the world. And I think if we're not going to do it, then no one is going to do it. So please join us.
Love it. I just want to add a little bit of final thought here on the 1031 side. I don't think we're going to make A16Z obsolete through ideology. I think that if you build on open protocols, you can actually outperform the centralized walled gardens. It's just a harder path. It takes longer. But our plan at 1031 is to do it the right way and absolutely destroy the returns that A16Z and the others provide to their investors. Freaks, if you still use X, make sure you follow Calle. It's x.com/CalleBTC. Every time he posts, press the retweet button. It goes a long way. He's our leader over there, and he needs your support.
I'm not a leader.
You're a leader, whether you like it or not. Those are the best. The best leaders are the ones that don't want to be a leader. So thank you for your service and your sacrifice.
That was so typical thing to say.
We're going to keep the trend going with dispatches. We're keep the momentum up. All the relevant links are still at dispatch.com. Share with your friends and family. It goes a long way. It's in every podcast app. Just search Scylla Dispatch in your favorite podcast app.
Join us. Become a Bitcoin developer. Leave your corporate life.
Or don't, maybe do it on the side for a little bit. Get your feet wet. It's kind of a superpower having a separate paycheck while you build freedom tech on the side. So take advantage of it if you can.
Fulfilling life. It's actually fulfilling.
There you go. Well, be fulfilled, freaks. Love you all.